Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcast. You're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media, AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. Don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. At some point, folks, probably last week, I'm on vacation, but I did have a story on, three first-round picks, former first-round picks here who need to produce this year. And that's, of course, Emmanuel Forbes, Jahan Dotson, and Jamin Davis. Would have been probably last week by the time you listen to this. So if you haven't read it, go back and read it. Do me a favor. I'm on vacation, so whatever. Anyways, because I'm on vacation, I did record a bunch of podcasts. So if some big news happens, then you're going to have to find out about it from someone else on ESPN.com, right? Because I'm not going to update the podcast for it. So anyways, today I'm joined by ESPN's Jordan Raanan, who covers the New York Giants. The Commanders of the Giants have been the stepchildren of the NFC East in recent years. So is that going to happen again? But I wanted to check in around the NFC East just to see what are the Commanders up against? What did other teams do this offseason? What's their optimism level, et cetera? And I also like to hear what people think about what Washington has done just to provide a different perspective. But also, Jordan covered Washington's new offensive line coach, Bobby Johnson, for 2 years with the Giants. What did he think of what Bobby Johnson did in New York? So anyways, get into all that stuff. And it's always a good conversation with Jordan. So, and you learn about the Commanders' NFC East foes. You need to know about them. What's up with Daniel Jones, Danny Dimes? How good did Malik Neighbors look this spring? All that stuff. And where are they at in their program? How big a year is this for Brian Daboll? Anyway, we get into all that with Jordan. So here's my conversation with ESPN's Jordan Raanan. Will Jaden Daniels climb to the top of the NFC East? Will the Commanders zip past the competition? We'll have to wait until the season starts to see, but you can get a head start on the competition this summer at the Adventure Park at Sandy Spring. Named the #1 aerial adventure park in North America by USA Today, the country's largest ropes course and zipline park is now open 7 days a week. Located in the heart of Montgomery County, Maryland, the Adventure Park offers climbing, ziplining, axe throwing, food, and more. Experience adventure day or night with your family, or leave the kids at home for one of the exclusive Keep It Lit adult-only events. These summer date nights are perfect, featuring glow lights, music, fire pits, and endless adventure. With challenges anywhere from beginner to expert, there is something for all skill levels. Not looking to scramble through the trees? Keep your feet planted in the pocket and throw a perfect spiral at axe throwing. You can throw at traditional targets or play any number of interactive games. You can even upload your own image. Anytime you're thinking about reaching new heights, make sure you know before you go. The Adventure Park at Sandy Spring is the only ACCT accredited park in Maryland or Virginia. So there you have it, folks. The best climbing, ziplining, and axe throwing in the country right here in the DMV. Reserve your adventure today at www.theadventurepark.com/Keim. All right, Jordan, time for the stepchildren of the NFC East. But, I think both these teams have had intriguing off seasons. How would you sum up the Giants offseason, and where do you feel they stand going into training camp?
Yeah, for the Giants, it's sort of like a relocation of assets. That's kind of a reallocation, I should say, of assets. So really both. But so instead of having high-end players at running back and safety and Xavier McKinney, who left for Green Bay, the Giants then took their assets. They put them into Brian Burns, who they traded for from the Carolina Panthers. So edge rusher, pass rush, more important position than safety. Makes sense. Drafted Malik Neighbors, investing in that wide receiver position. They now have Malik Neighbors, who's the number 6 overall pick. They have Wan'Dale Robinson, who was a second-round pick 2 years ago. Jalen Hyatt, who was a third-round pick last year. So they've invested in that position, and instead of running back where they had Saquon Barkley. And then, put money into their offensive line. They signed John Runyon Jr., Jermaine Illuminor, 2 guys that they are confident, can be competent, at least competent quality starters for them. Obviously, a huge area of need. So, still a work in progress, but a reallocation of resources for sure.
Listen, we've only seen them spring practices. I mean, I think you and I could probably go out there and look okay at times. Well, maybe not anymore.
Pick up basketball. That's what I explained to my friends. They're like, well, how does he look? I'm like, dude, it's like you and your friends going to play pickup basketball. That's pretty much what the spring is like.
Yeah,
like that's
exactly.
how serious some of these guys take it.
Right. And, and some take it more serious than others. So you never know. Like there were some guys in there that I've covered in the past who they would go 110% no matter when they're out there. So in situations like this, they'd look really good. And then you get to the season, you realize everybody else stepped it up and they're at the same level. So you never know. But do you see this as an improved team? And what level are we talking about here?
I still think they're probably in that same boat. The Giants won 6 games last year. They even when they made the playoffs the year before, they won 9. I still see them as somewhere in between. Like last year, everything went wrong. So, and they still managed to win 6 games. They're probably in like that 7, 8, 7. That 8's probably a lot. They're probably in that 6 or 7 range still. So I just view it as okay. It's a team that's moving in a different direction. Like it seems inevitable that the next move is all right. Where's the quarterback going to come from?
Right.
Where Washington, you kind of are a year ahead of where the Giants are.
Right.
In reality.
Well, and that I was going to ask it too, because with Dable, what kind of pressure is going to be on him this year? Is this it's only his 3rd year, but is this a make or break year for him?
I don't think it's make or break. Things would have to go really wrong. But then again, John, you've seen it go really wrong. I've seen it go really wrong. I've seen coaches get fired and before their 2nd year was even over after making the playoffs their 1st year. So yeah, and if it goes really poorly, the pressure is going to be on. But I do think the Giants are invested in this regime in trying to make it work long term, where they're trying not to be too narrow with their thinking. But at the same time, Brian Daboll can't have it blow up in his face again. Right. He basically has a almost entirely new coaching staff because that went completely wrong with Wink Martindale. Not just him, but a lot of the coaches, they didn't love working for him. The match wasn't good between Daboll and the coaches. So look, he gets a do-over, right? He has one playoff season and with a playoff win, one pretty terrible season. The Giants had to win some games at the end of the year to get to 6 wins. This is a big year in basically which way that narrative tilts. I think that's fair to say. But this is an organization that is looking at, okay, this is year 3 of an extensive rebuild. And year 2, to be honest with you, their success in year 1 kind of set them back in their rebuild.
Right.
I think everybody kind of realizes that.
Yeah. One of those coaches he got rid of was Bobby Johnson, who's now down here as the O-line coach. What was his reputation up there?
Fans hated Bobby Johnson. I'll tell you that much. Players, for the most part, liked Bobby Johnson. They thought he was an okay coach. They didn't rate, talking about it on the side off the record. They didn't think he was, the greatest offensive line coach, of all time. Obviously, the results, though, spoke for themselves. And if Brian Daboll has to get rid of Bobby Johnson, who was the guy he brought in, he was his guy, came from Buffalo, that it went wrong there. So his teaching techniques is something that maybe weren't received by everybody. I think that's what I'll say.
Because they had a young line up there too, right? And they drafted some guys but it's funny because like the first year,
there wasn't the growth by any of these players. That was the main thing. None of the guys, the young guys really, Andrew Thomas was kind of predated him. So none of the young guys that were drafted during that time progressed to the point where you say, okay, that we're building something here.
And he was in charge of the run game. And it seemed like the run game first year was good, but what would you credit that to?
They were just dedicated to the run that year. I don't know how much he was really the run game coordinator.
Okay.
Look, they got a lot of cooks in the kitchen there. Mike Kafka came over. He was the offensive coordinator, his first time being an offensive coordinator. I think everybody contributed. But look, Daniel Jones ran the ball well. Saquon was healthy for a full season. I think they found some things that worked. They did a good job of finding things that worked with the guys that they had. And look, they knew it was limited. And I give Bobby Johnson credit and the whole offensive staff that year, they probably got as much as they could out of that group because it was not overly talented.
Gotcha. So losing Barkley, how big a deal? And like you said, they've kind of reallocated assets, but how big a deal is it for that offense?
Look, he's a good player. He's not the player he was when he first came into the league. I don't think it's a loss for sure, but I don't think it's a debilitating loss. I think it's a position you could generally fill, right? Devin Singletary has proven to be a quality player in the league. He doesn't scare you like Saquon Barkley does, but he's been successful in multiple stops now. He had a couple quality seasons in Houston before this. He knows the Daboll offense. He's their guy basically. So it hurts in that it's not a difference maker back there anymore. And it hurts in their depth. Like Devin Singletary and got a bunch of guys who've never received any work really in the NFL. They have nothing behind Devin Singletary. So if Devin Singletary gets hurt, that's when you're looking at it like, wow, what's the Giants' backfield? They're hoping Tyron Tracy, who's a fifth-round pick out of Purdue this year, turns into something. Eric Gray, who was a mid-round pick last year, hoping he turns into something, but he had a rough rookie year. So, yeah, I guess it's cross your fingers behind him. The depth is definitely a little bit eye-opening at that position.
So the other area they invested in was, like you said, receiver. So it's drafting Neighbors, signing Allen Robinson, and
we'll see about him.
Okay, and so there you go. That's what I'm going to ask you.
See what that contribution is.
What are your expectations for that group? Because that's always been the thing for Daniel Jones. Like, do they have enough around him? Do they yet have enough? And with losing Waller, he used to get hurt, but like, that's also another weapon that you lose there. So what's the state of that? Is that enough to elevate Daniel Jones?
See, that's a tough question. Is it enough to elevate Daniel Jones? It really, they need their offensive line to be decent. Let's start there. That they couldn't block last year and basically ruined everything. They couldn't. Daniel Jones played poorly. Everybody played poorly. It was a disaster. They averaged, I think it was 11 points per game over the first 10 games of the season. Like, that's embarrassing. And that's why Brian Daboll's essentially taking over the offense.
Losing twice to them. That's what's embarrassing, but go on.
Yeah. A team that was averaging 11 points per game. They eventually shredded, Tommy DeVito shredded the Commanders' defense late in the season, which, should take a look in the mirror at that point. But their offensive line was in better shape at that point. That's part of what I'm talking about here. I don't know if there's a lot of pressure on Malik Neighbors to be really good early. Not directly on him, but like, if this team is going to be good, they kind of need him to be that guy. Like, there's no like ease in period. It's like, we're going to throw you the ball. You're going to be that guy. And then it would elevate everyone else around them. So they do have good receivers. I do think that this receiving core can be good enough. Is it enough to like carry a bad offense? I don't know about that, right? It's enough to carry a quarterback who's a quality quarterback, not great, play behind a bad offensive line. If that's the case, probably not. But Malik Neighbors looks pretty special. You watch him in the spring. When you stand out there and watch players, they're all good, right? This is the NFL. These guys are all super talented. But there's levels to it. And when you have a great player, you look at him, you're just like, you could tell, right, John? You're like, okay, that guy's got a different level than everybody else. So, yeah, maybe all these other guys are really good at a professional level. When you see Malik Neighbors go out there, like, wow, those skills, that talent level is pretty special. Now, whether it translates, whether he blossoms and develops, we'll have to wait and see. But I would be surprised if he didn't go out there and be successful in this league.
It is funny because we had to do that assignment about how the first round picks, most of these guys look good in the spring. Like, I had to write, Jay Dan's made a great first impression. And you wrote the story about how Malik Neighbors made a great first impression too.
Yeah.
But they're also highly talented players. Were you surprised they didn't take a quarterback?
A little bit, but I won't say completely, because beating the Commanders, by beating the Patriots, like, it cost the Giants the opportunity to really get, like, the quarterbacks that they desired, right? They didn't have a chance at the top 3 picks. They were not available.
Right.
So 3 quarterbacks are already off the board. So now you're dealing with like a different level of talent, right? And so at that point, it became a little less likely that the Giants were going to go to that position. And here we are.
How good do you think this defense can be with getting Burns out there, pairing with Thibodeau?
Kayvon Thibodeau, Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence.
And Dexter Lawrence.
That's a really good front, right? Their defense will go as far as those 3 will take them. They're not very talented on the back end. Bobby Okereke is a really good quality middle linebacker. He's a really good player, Pro Bowl caliber player. So their front, it could be really good, and that could carry them. Now, again, like I mentioned before, depth, an issue there as well. That I keep mentioning, which is what I'm saying. This is still a work in progress. This roster still needs to be built out from top to bottom. And defensive line is a place where you kind of want depth. I don't know if they necessarily have it. So how much can those 3 guys particularly carry this defense? I think they could be good. I think they probably need another year or 2 of reinforcements and additions before they can be, a defense that can take over. But I do think, especially in spurts, it's going to be a pretty good defense because that front can create pressure and pressure the opposing quarterbacks into mistakes and really shut down teams that just can't stop them up front.
By the way, with Jones, when do you think he'll be ready?
Oh, he's ready. He's going to be ready.
So he'll be fine. Okay, so he'll be good.
He actually, he's one of those ball guys. He had this surgery on Thanksgiving morning. So that's November. Takes you August is a full 9 months out, which is a pretty good time for guys to be able to return. So he's going to be cleared for the start of training camp. I'd be surprised if something would have to go wrong for him not to be the starting quarterback week 1 for the Giants. Question is, how successful can he be using his legs and running the ball coming off a torn ACL early in the season? You've seen it in the past, RG3 coming back from torn ACLs and quarterbacks. It usually takes time. So I'm interested to see how much that affects, because that's a big part of his game.
Right. I was going to ask them. And I would say from this end, I'm sure a lot of people listening, like maybe they can finally stop the zone read, or he's keeping the ball around the end. Finally, if he's got some of those issues. So
yeah, how much are you going to run that if you're the Giants early in the season with Daniel Jones off the torn ACL? I think that'll be an interesting question. If they're kind of in the last year of Daniel Jones, which appears to be the way it's headed, and Brian Daboll's kind of under some pressure, and he knows he needs to have a big year, and he's in charge. Maybe they just say, "Hey, throw him out there. What do we got to lose?" I don't. These are all things that factor into the equation.
So, last thing, I don't know if you've paid attention much at all to what's going on down here, but do you think even just from being in the division, is the perception maybe starting to change about this franchise because of the changes that were made and what they've done in the offseason? Have you? I
think there's people look at Washington now and you're a little fearful, right? You're still like, oh, they're Washington, but I still think that that's the impression. I'm talking fans in general.
Right.
But at the same time, they know like, oh, they got a quarterback now. If he is legit, there's some talent down there, right? There's talent to work with for sure. So I think, and the fact that Daniel Snyder's gone also changes the impression, I think, of Washington. But until they do it, I think if you're a Giant fan, they're naturally, and I'm stereotyping, they naturally think, well, they're Washington, they're the Commanders, we always beat them.
Which has been kind of the case.
Yeah.
And
they've been a bad team. The only team they've been able to beat consistently in the division, or even at all in the division, has been Washington. That's the reality. But I think in the back of their mind, they know it's dangerous. They're dangerous because they might be turning there. They got the new ownership and they got the quarterback. Those are like the 2 biggest things, right? Those are like 1 and 2 on the top of the checklist.
All I know is if I had wagered money on that those games over the last couple of years, I'd be doing this podcast from the back of my car and not in my home office because we wouldn't have a home. I would have lost a lot.
No matter what, the Giants just seem to dominate them. Really,
it's crazy. And even last year, like, oh, DeVito, oh yeah, they should win this game. It's like, what's he gonna do?
Yeah.
So there you go.
Well, as much as we sit here and talk about Brian Daboll, I think this is a good X's and O's staff, and they just ran circles around the previous staff, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, listen, even the game up in New York, it took them a full half to adjust to what they're doing pressure-wise and to get more than a 5-man protection scheme for Sam Howell. And then they actually started to move the ball. They just couldn't score. But it took them a half to get to that protection because they were killing them up front.
Yeah.
So,
they finally put it together late in the game, and they started, putting points up on the Giants defense, but it was a little too late.
Does DeVito have a future there?
It's hard to envision something right now because Daniel Jones is the starter. The Giants have made that abundantly clear. Drew Lock was signed to be the backup. He's getting paid $5 million guaranteed. He's the backup. Brian Daboll only usually carries 2 quarterbacks on the active roster. You tell me, where does Tommy fit in? Yeah, they'd like to carry him probably on the practice squad and keep developing him, but are they willing to use a roster spot? It's not something they have in the past. Use the roster spot on a third quarterback. So it'll be very interesting to see here. It'll be a very big summer, I think, for Tommy DeVito's future. And it's amazing because he proved something last year. He proved to people, look, I belong in this league. I can play in this league. I can win games in this league. But now it's like he has to prove it all over again. You're still an undrafted rookie.
Right.
We don't want to make you our bona fide backup quarterback behind a questionable starter. So now where do you kind of sit? So it's a weird spot.
Jordan, thanks a lot, man.
You got it, John.
That's it for this episode. Thanks to Jordan for joining me, and thank you, as always, for tuning in. I'll be back with another episode on Monday. Yes, Monday. I'll talk to you next time.